Welcome back, everybody, to Neutrality Studies. My name is Pascal Lota, and today I am joined again by Larry C. Johnson for an update on everything about the Iran war. Larry, welcome back.
Hey, Pascal. Good to join you.
Thank you for taking the time, and I really wanted to talk to you about your assessment, especially about the kind of operational or kinetic effects of the war that we are seeing. Just before this one, I talked to Stephen Starr, and he gave an update about all of the destroyed radar systems and the capacity that Iran still has. And I really wonder about your assessment where the war is going now after 2 weeks.
Well, if you're on the Iranian side, they're pretty pleased with how it's going, despite they've really taken some blows on some infrastructure, but they've accomplished significant military objectives that have hurt U.S. operational capabilities. Number one, and as Stephen talked about, the destruction of those radars. Those are billion-dollar one's a $500 million, another couple are billion-dollar plus. They were critical for identifying threats, both maritime, aviation, coordinating air movements, deconflicting air movements. And then we've learned tonight, CENTCOM has announced about 2 hours ago, KC-135 was shot down. Now, then I guess they may come out and try to say it was accidental, but it wasn't.
What is the case? Is a transport plane or a refueling plane?
It's a refueling plane. A KC-135 is a plane that can refuel up to 5 F-35A jets. And that's from the bases where they're taking off, the F-35s have to be refueled even to get back to the base. If they're going to, because they don't go too deep into Iran. Anyway, there were reportedly 2 of these KC-135s returning, and what I've learned is the second plane saw a surface-to-air missile fired up. The second plane took evasive action. It hit the first plane, and it's unclear whether there were 5 or 6 people on board, but they're all dead. I mean, you hit a fuel tank, that thing explodes. It doesn't. They don't have time to put on parachutes and jump out.
But would that have been shot down over Iran, or would Iran have managed to shoot it down over somebody else's airspace?
Well, it was shot down over Iraq, of all places.
Iraq, okay.
But again, some of the Iraqi groups that are aligned with Iran, there is a Hezbollah element. They probably took the shot. So right there, right now the administration's only reported 8 KIA. So right there is another 5 or 6, potentially doubling it. And I firmly believe that the Trump administration is lying about the number of actual casualties. They're hiding it. So, but that's not all. There have been a large number of the KC-135s destroyed on the ground at one of the bases in the region. I'm not going to say which base, but it is basically what Iran is doing is preventing the United States from using these different bases. There are 13 locations throughout, from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, even Oman, that have been hit. And so the U.S. ability to continue to operate in those areas is being reduced dramatically. They're being forced to flee. And once they're forced to leave, where are they going to go? Even if they go to Israel, they're being targeted in Israel. So they're going to be forced to move to someplace like Cyprus, the Turkish part of Cyprus, or to Turkey maybe. But again, then once they show up in Turkey, then it becomes a threat. So from the standpoint of Iran, they are doing great with their missile strikes and drone strikes. The United States has not been able to stop them. I know in one particular case, the U.S. defenses have been they're depleted. There is no more air defense at this one location. Um, by contrast, then Iran also they've got the strategic initiative. They have taken control of the Strait of Hormuz. They have shut down all traffic. It's not just oil, it's liquid natural gas, and it's urea, fertilizer. In fact, 30% or more of the world's fertilizer comes out of that Persian Gulf. I didn't realize that until I started looking into it the other day. And so by shutting down the flow of oil, liquid natural gas, and fertilizer, Iran is there at a minimum, there is going to be a global recession and there are likely food shortages because the farmers are not going to get the fertilizer they need to plant crops and to have those crops grow properly.
Right. Unless this stops soon, which it doesn't look like at the moment. And the way in which Iran not only survived the initial blows, and of course Ayatollah Khamenei is dead, but the Ayatollah is dead. Long live the Ayatollah, right? I mean, we've got the next
Yeah,
one. The Iranians proved that their governmental structures survive all of this. Of course, United States, Donald Trump, sorry, basically announced victory, and we struck them. He did this stupid speech, as like on a scale from 1 to 10, I will give our operation a 12 to 15, which is
right.
like ridiculous kind of talk, childish talk. But it looked like in the first couple of days as if though the United States and Israel are achieving a lot of their initial goals, including killing of the top leadership. But turns out Iran seems to have been prepared for this.
Yes, no, they're very much prepared for it. And that's the thing the West has been unable to get its arms around. And it's a combination of arrogance and hubris. The shutting the Persian Gulf right now has it's a crude term, but it captures the power. The Iranians have the United States by the balls. What's the United States going to do? Uh, dropping bombs along the shoreline there? That's not going to open the Strait of Hormuz. Not at all, because the Iranians have drones, they have missiles. They don't have to be right on the shore. They can stand off. In addition, a lot of their caves all along that coastline that can hide and protect Iranian units. So, and it's reported out of CBS that they had mined the strait. I don't believe that for the simple reason that Iran continues to have its ships load up at Karj Island, sail out, and some Chinese ships are sailing out with oil. So then they may even allow Pakistani ships. So it's not a complete freeze, but it is of such a substance that it's really disrupted the oil market. Oil today was back up towards close to 100 bottles on Brent Future. Trump had driven it down the other day by claiming that we're near the end. This is almost over. He was lying. It's not almost over. What Iran is going to, Iran will, I believe, will continue. They'll keep this closed, and the economic impact on it. I wrote a piece talking about the chokehold. It's a choke point, and going through the countries most likely to be the most severely affected. Japan is one, Taiwan is another, India is another. But it is generally it's going to have a negative effect on the global economy. It's going to spike inflation because the price is doubled, and we're seeing, like here in Florida where I live, the price of oil, the price of a gallon of gasoline from a week ago Monday until last Sunday, it went up 50 cents. Then from Sunday to Wednesday, it went up 15 more cents, so that's 65. And then between yesterday and today, Thursday, it went up 5 cents more. Now, we're a country that's, quote, energy independent. Now, we get very, very little oil out of the Persian Gulf. If that's happening here, I can only begin to imagine what's happening around the world. I don't know, in your area, have you seen any change in the gasoline prices?
Not myself, but I'm not keeping close watch on it because I don't have a car. But the Japanese government is already decided that they are going to release some of their strategic reserves, and the number 254 is floating around very big time over here because that's the reported number of days that Japan has a strategic reserve. Apparently, the largest per capita in the world. And I don't know how true that number actually is. 254 days. It strikes me as very long, but Japan is extremely vulnerable to oil and gas interruptions because it has none of its own.
Right.
Almost none. Actually, the only potential field that it can tap is in the Sakhalins, and that's a joint project with the Russians. So I really wonder if the Japanese are not gonna reach out to Moscow and say like, hey, how about we restart this thing, which they didn't freeze to the point the Europeans did. They put it on hold, but they never shut it down. They never completely abandoned it. But well, that's a completely different discussion. The thing is, the hurt is real, and the hurt is going to get more and more real over time for all of the advanced Western economies, including the United States. So, and what you're saying is very interesting. So, if the Iranians are actually able to guarantee passage to the ships that they like and say like, guys, you can go through. They
Right.
already made the announcement that they would allow passage to ships from countries that expel the, I think, U.S. and Israeli diplomats, right?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
read I read this comment. I'm not entirely sure if it's really from an IRGC account or if that was just a hoax. But one was saying that the Iranians guarantee safe passage to any tanker that manages to convince the Americans to create a patrol for them through the strait because they would love to sink them. But what we see is the U.S.
Yeah.
the U.S. shipping is not going close to the strait. They're not. Can you maybe speak to that a bit?
Well, it looks to me like the chief of naval operations got the Trump and said, "No, we're not doing that," because the ships would be sunk. But if you'd use cruisers, maybe destroyers, but even then, it's very risky. There's nothing they can do that can prevent the drones and or anti-ship missiles, as well as the Iranians have these small boats called bog hammers that are in tunnels, so they're protected.
Yep.
So although the U.S. has got, oh, we destroyed the Iranian Navy, no, they haven't. They've got basically like a coast guard that can operate and swarm the United States with literally hundreds of boats. It's sort of like water, and then they've got the water drones. So it's
Right.
not just aerial, but it's in the water. So this Iran is in a very, very strong position. They can resist U.S. efforts militarily to try to guarantee safe passage in that waterway, and then they can compound it by working with the Houthis to fully shut down the Red Sea.
Right.
Hey, very brief intermission because I was recently banned from YouTube, and although I'm back, this can happen anytime again. So please consider subscribing not only here, but to my mailing list on Substack. That's pascalotta.substack.com. The link's going to be in the description below, and now back to the video.
And how devastating is the loss of the U.S. radar system in the region? I mean, Stephen Starr pointed out that this reduces basically the response time of the U.S. and Israel to incoming missiles to 90 seconds. Is that
Yeah,
about realistic?
90 seconds to a minute. The compensation for this is to use AWACS, so aerial borne platforms, to try to compensate for the loss. Because without those radars, the U.S. and Israel, they're blind. It's blinded them, and it's not like you just got, that it's a $50,000 system and you just replace a component and you're ready to go. No, these are 500 million, a half $500 million and $1 billion for at least two of them. Those are incredibly difficult to replace. One of
And
them
apparently really
was
easy to destroy because Iran did it in the first week.
right. In fact, one of them was destroyed by a drone, which again, the notion that the United States has an effective air defense system, the Patriot system and the THAAD system, it's a joke.
Right.
Um, And frankly, the mathematics on it don't work out. The total number of PAC-3 missiles that are fired from the Patriot missile battery is 4,620 since 2015. That's the total. Now, that's assuming that none have been used anywhere else, none have been fired. Though, when those missiles are fired at a threat, an incoming missile, you got to fire 2 of them. So just, do the math. If you've got 4,620 to fire, and you're going to have 2, that takes you down to 2,310, right? That's the total number of missiles they could engage. Well, Russia in the 4-year war has fired over 12,000 missiles. So if we'd put all of our Patriots in Ukraine, and they could only deal with 1/5 of the missiles that Russia has fired. So you got to go back and really question these claims by Ukraine that, we shot down 90% of this and 90% of that. Nonsense. That's a lie. But what I do know is that at least one of the military bases, the U.S. military bases, they are completely depleted. They have no more air defense.
So, I mean, as so often, war actually teaches us a lot about the realities, and the reality is neither Israel nor the United States nor Iran can defend themselves against incoming missile attacks. Right? All of these places are basically open territory for the other one's attacks, because everybody figured out how to overwhelm the other one.
Well, let me pause you there just to point out, Russia has generally figured that out. They've demonstrated it with a variety of where ATACMS missiles and both the British Storm Shadow. They did have an issue with Bryansk for whatever reason. The air defense system there wasn't active, but Russia's been the only one that really seemed to have figured it out. But the rest are, just kidding themselves. All they're doing is providing a nice, healthy bottom line for the military-industrial complex, who's getting, they're being paid to build these things.
It surprises me. I mean, I always thought that probably Israel has the most reliable air defense system in the world, with its 3 tiers and everything coming from the U.S. and under constant surveillance and super well protected, Iron Dome and whatnot. But
where they had Iron Dome, David Sling.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what was the third component that you thought they have.
There was a third one, but
because they relied upon the Patriot for the 3rd level and the THAAD missile for the 4th level. But THAAD and Patriot have proven to be ineffective.
So what I wanted to ask you is, like, what is your views on, nuclear deterrence? Because on the one hand, we know, I mean, the US and Israel are 2 independent nuclear weapon states, meaning that Israel could at any point in time fire at one of its nukes, and it's assumed that it has something between 100 to 400 nuclear warheads at Iran. On the other hand, Iran, what I figure is that Iran established by now that it is fighting a defensive war because it always symmetrically responds. If you attack an Iranian desalination plant, they're gonna blow up your desalination plant. If you attack their oil fields, they're gonna blow up your oil fields. If you attack their ships, it's gonna attack your ships. I mean, they did that very, very symmetrically, and they must have a plan for a nuclear attack. My question is it thinkable that Iran would target then the nuclear facilities that Israel has, the nuclear reactors in Israel? Is that something that would make sense to you?
Well, yes, but actually, I think what Iran's going to do now is they're immediately working on producing a nuclear warhead, a functional nuclear missile.
Right.
And they'll unveil it within the next 2 to 3 weeks, possibly. And
I mean,
because, well, let me explain the rationale. Because they are going to continue to hit Israel with missiles. We saw yesterday Hezbollah, who's coordinating now fully with Israel on this, they launched like a 4-hour rocket missile barrage of Israel, Hezbollah, and the Iron Dome completely failed to stop it. So Israel knows that it's going to be facing more continued missile attacks that it cannot stop.
Mm.
And so at that point, they'll say, okay, we have to use a nuke. Well, if Iran says, we've got a nuke too, you hit us with a nuke, we're going to hit you back, that's Iran's only guarantee that there will not be a nuclear attack by Israel. And I think that Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, I think he has given the green light to do that. In part, it's just in part because they murdered his family.
Right.
You know, the Israelis murdered his mother and his father and his wife and his baby daughter. So, you know, I think he recognizes that Iran's moral principle of not building a nuclear weapon has cost the lives of many innocent people. Recall that, well, you may not recall, you're too young, but when the Iraq-Iran war started in September of 1980, it was 3 years later, in August of 1983, that Iraq launched the first chemical weapon attack, a weapon of mass destruction on Iran. It did it to stop an Iranian attack. But those chemical precursors were provided by the United States. For the next 5 years, until August of 1988, Iraq launched like 20 different chemical weapon attacks on Iran. Not once during that period did Iran develop or use chemical weapons. Not at all. Why? Because of the religious principle. They viewed that as a sin. So we've already seen, you know, Iran has always got a history of exercising actually some moral, ethical judgments in what it does. And you're correct to say that there was an attack on one of their desalinization plant in Iran. And normally they would retaliate, but they didn't. And I think the reason they didn't is they recognize that if they retaliate, if they take that step now, literally millions of people in the Persian Gulf will die, because it will wipe out fresh water, and the cities in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Kuwait, they don't have fresh water to, you know, the people would either have to flee or they'd die. So I think Iran made a conscious decision not to escalate it to that level yet.
Yes, but they maintain that capacity. I mean, the fact that they then did attack like the oil infrastructure in the surrounding
Right.
in the Gulf states it sends this very clear message, right? You take one of us down, we take one of yours down,
Yes.
and hurt everybody. Unfortunately, it's nothing that we want, but it's what has to be done for the defense. It's fascinating to me that the United States managed to coerce more than 140 states into co-sponsoring that bill at the UN Security Council to condemning Iran for its attacks on its neighbors.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how Russia and China let that pass, but we will in due course. Do you have?
Well, they were harshly critical of it, and Lavrov had chastised the Gulf Cooperation Council the other day in Moscow. I believe it was like last Monday, for taking such a hypocritical stance and not calling out the United States and Israel for their attack. I don't, you know, I think there are some procedural reasons that they chose not to veto it, but it wasn't that they sided with the argument or agreed with it. But you know, Russia in particular is now in a very, very, very strong position,
Right.
with a lot of leverage over a lot of countries that need oil, that need liquid natural gas, that need fertilizer, because they need Russia. And Russia and China have made it clear they're going to protect Iran. They're not going to leave Iran to its own devices. So, and I think they recognize Iran is in a very, as I said earlier, they're in a very strong position right now. Nobody can budge them out. There's not a military action you can take that's going to guarantee you that you're going to open the Strait of Hormuz without suffering tremendous losses.
Do you think the U.S. is or the Trump administration is seriously contemplating boots on the ground in one or the other form?
Oh, I'm sure people who have no knowledge of military affairs uh, are going to encourage that. But anybody that knows anything about the military recognizes it's incredibly stupid and dangerous. But just because it's stupid and dangerous and will result in significant U.S. casualties without achieving any tactical or strategic objective, doesn't mean that they won't do it. But for example, one option? Oh, we're going to assemble an army that will invade Iran so that we can defeat their army. Okay, they got a 1,000,000-man army. The normal rule of thumb is you got to have a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 advantage in troop size to take on a defender. So that means the United States would be what, 3 million, 4 million man army? We only got a 457 or 470,000 man army right now. And throw in the Marines, you got another 110,000. Okay, good luck, guys. You only need to expand yourself by 5 times. And so let's say they magically somehow can recruit another 2.4 million soldiers. They got to be trained. Training takes time. So there's nothing in the short run that can be done with a conventional military force. Then they say, yeah, but what about special operations? Well, you know what? I happen to know quite a bit about that. I only worked 23 years with JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, and SOCOM, the Special Operations Command. So I know a little bit. I scripted the exercises that were for various missions. They can conduct raids. They can do hostage rescues. The Maersk, Alabama, if you remember that, where the Somali pirates, took over the ship and then they held the captain hostage. Yeah, they're great. They can do that kind of stuff all day long. But unless you're talking about a raid, which is going to be a mission that's going to last less than 12 hours, they're not a force that can go in and sustain operations for 2 or 3 days. Okay? And getting them in and out is a whole chore. What people, if they're drawing lessons from Venezuela, forget about that. That was an inside job. I know that for a fact. There were 3 members of Maduro's security team that were U.S. government informants. They were DEA informants, and they were doing it. They gave up Maduro for the $50 million. That was what that was all about. But that shouldn't be the rule of thumb of what we could, quote, do in Iran. That's not going to happen. So,
So when people say like special military operation, special operation forces, in order to go in and take out the 450 kilogram of 60% enriched plutonium, I mean that's pure fantasy. I mean you would have to go somewhere deep into a bunker, supposing that you actually know where it is, supposing that it's in one bunker and not in 2 or 3.
It's called a hardened, deeply buried target. I worked and scripted an exercise on that about 16 years ago. Okay. So, like I said, it can't be done.
Can't be done. So that really leaves only few options, because if we follow that the chain of explanations that you gave to us, then like also the missile capacity of the U.S. is going to run out, and maybe you're going to have to retreat to using something like drones in order to keep up the bombing, which is maybe thinkable, but
yeah, they really haven't produced the drones, and the kind of drones they're using. There's still these $30 million, $35 million MQ-9 Reapers that reportedly well over 20 have been shot down so far by Iran. They do have an ample supply of JASSM, Joint Airstrike missiles. They've got enough of those. They don't have a lot of JDAMs. The JDAMs are limited. They've got they're glide bombs. It can go about 50 miles max. The JSOMs can go 500 miles. So that is a formidable weapon. They don't have a lot of Tomahawks. The Tomahawk is in short supply, and I don't know how many they've expended over the last 12 days, but I would suspect, it could be as high as 1,000. And then, the annual production, last I heard, was like 90 a year. So
Right.
do the math.
Yeah. So and Iran is of course going to try to further push back the US, right? And actually, the Professor Marandi from Tehran University, he told me, look, the goal of us is to make sure the United States loses the capacity to ever do this again. Not just promise it won't do it again, but lose the capacity. So meaning chasing them out of the Gulf region.
Yeah.
So do you think that they are actually on track of getting there over time?
Oh, yeah. Yes. No, absolutely.
Mm.
I mean, like I said, if if I told you the base that has already depleted its air defense system, you'd be shocked. So they've already rendered the headquarters Bahrain naval base for the Fifth Fleet. They've rendered that completely. They can't be used again anytime soon. Al Udeid Air Force Base. The personnel there, on my understanding, have either, if they're not evacuated, they're not working. There's a thing called the Combined Air Operations Center, CAOC. You're not going to have the CAOC up and running because it's not a hardened facility. So any missile that hits that would kill a large number of U.S. and allied personnel. You got the Brits, the French, the Canadians, the Germans, the Italians, Spaniards, and, Jordanians, Iraqis, Turks, a lot of different organizations. You can go online and look up CAOC, CAOC, or Al Udeid Combined Air Operations Center, and you'll see they've actually got full photographs of all the people sitting there smiling, looking up at the camera.
But the talk last week was that the US would actually bring its aircraft carriers closer to Iran. I think that didn't really happen. And there was talk that the French are going to send part of their navy. Do we have any updates on that? It seems that nobody dares to really go close enough to be in striking range at the moment.
Yeah, in fact, the U.S. Navy's staying 700 kilometers offshore. They've admitted to that, and that's because if they get any closer, they're going to potentially get sunk. There's already, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding the Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
The U.S. says, "Oh, he didn't lay a hand on us," and the Iranians said, "Yeah, we hit it." So did it? I think it was hit. I think some damage was done, and they've sort of moved offshore, so they're not going to run the risk of getting engaged, or at least if they're engaged, they'll have time to react. So again, this what was stated about by Professor Morandi, I think is exactly right, and they're doing it. They're if you want the three major bases, the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, the Bahrain Naval Facility, and Al Udeid in Qatar. Those three have been significantly degraded.
You said at the beginning that there were also facilities in Oman struck. I thought Oman didn't have any, did they actually?
No, there was a small facility. I mean, it was not big, but it's not important. I wrote it. I provided the list. Here, let me look that up real quick.
Because I always made the argument that Oman wasn't struck so far because it doesn't have any installations, and Iran is making it clear that if you're an ally of the US, your security is lower than if you're neutral. So go neutral, my friends.
Yeah, well, let's. So I give you the complete rundown here. That's what's been hit. Kuwait, you've had multiple strikes on the Ali Al Salam Air Base, on Camp Arifshan, and the Shuaba Port. That was where the 6 U.S. servicemen were killed, and also Camp Buring. So there you got 4 in Kuwait. Bahrain, you got the U.S. Navy 5th Fleet headquarters. That's been basically disabled. Saudi Arabia, the Prince Sultan Air Base, the Al Udeid Air Base, and Dahal radar in Qatar. the Al Dhafra Air Base, Jebel Ali Port, Al Ruwais, which is a air defense system, the THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense, and Al Sadr facility. So there are 4 in the UAE. You got 1 in Jordan, Muwafaq Salti Air Base, Erbil Airport in Iraq. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. It was not Oman. They've steered clear of Oman, at least on military targets, and I think in part because of Oman's role in trying to broker a peace agreement.
Yeah,
But
but do they?
that's still
I thought
there-
they didn't have because like I thought Oman stays actually more or less pretty much neutral and doesn't station foreign troops, but I might be wrong on that. Yeah.
yeah, no, but I think you're probably right. It was my mistake.
The-
But it is just still that's we've identified between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah, yeah,
6, 7 countries, 13 different bases.
yeah.
Uh,
But it's
So
very it's very methodical,
methodical.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's you strike the the military facilities of the US and the Israelis. And that's also why last weekend the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, I always confuse him and Pashinyan, but Pezeshkian
yeah,
in Iran, he apologized actually to all the Gulf states saying like, sorry that we have to strike you, but we got to do it. So it's like they want to send also this very strong signal to the Gulf states, expel the US military and you will be better off.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's you're going to see, particularly with the Saudis, a reevaluation of how much they want to depend upon the United States anymore. In fact, um, I've spoken with somebody who's in a position to know on that very issue. And basically, the Saudis have told us, uh, you're on your own. Don't bother us.
Who told who?
The Saudis told the U.S.
Ah,
Personnel at the Prince Sultan Airborne or Air Base. And they said basically, you know what, uh, you're on your own.
right.
We're not going to be here defending you. So the Saudis have made it clear to the United States, okay, you want to stand there and fight, that's your fight. We're not going to do it.
That makes a lot of sense. I wonder, I haven't heard whether the Saudis have expelled the Iranian diplomats or not, because they started again like the direct diplomatic contact about a year and a half ago, right, through China. Or I'm not sure if their diplomats are still in place. I don't whether they still have a direct line of contact or not. But it's very much thinkable that they do, right?
Right, right. So
So I mean, Iran seems to try seems to try very hard to differentiate between U.S. assets in Gulf countries and the Gulf countries themselves, right? And say like, no, we are not attacking you guys. We're attacking the facilities that the U.S. uses. That's also why the desalination is still intact, right? They don't want to go to
yeah,
to the place where they directly attack the civilian population of those countries.
right. Yeah. So I was just looking. I just got a flash over X.
Mhm.
So since the start of this of Epic Fury, there have been 6 medevac flights from Semcon into Ramstein, and usually those going into Ramstein, that means they're going to the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, which is near Stuttgart. Um, I note that a week ago, Wednesday, on the 4th of March, Landstuhl issued a memo basically suspending all maternity services. So they're saying basically, if you're coming to the hospital to have a baby, forget about it. They're not doing that because they're handling their core mission, which is wounded soldiers. Uh,
Right.
today, as of 2 hours ago, CBS News is reporting that there's another military medical evacuation flight from Saudi Arabia to Ramstein with at least 19 wounded service members on board. Um, so this is, the U.S. is trying to hide these casualties, but they're not going to be able to forever. And that is just going to put more and more political pressure on Trump because, he ran on not starting these kinds of wars and getting involved with something. And this doesn't have an easy, quick, neat end to it at all.
No, I mean, if things remain as they stand at the moment, then the only way to convince the Iranians to stop firing is actually by taking the U.S. by taking the U.S. military out of there and give in to their demands. And I cannot see Donald Trump do that in any way, shape, or form because of his character. But
Well, he's going to ultimately he will have to because the economic and political costs will become so great that he can't. If he stays intransigent on that, he'll definitely be destroyed in the midterm elections in November. The Senate will be overturned and turned into the hands of the Democrats, and he'll be impeached. And I predict now he will be the first president actually convicted in an impeachment activity.
which brings me again back to this. I mean, if this becomes existential to the political career of Trump and his people, I mean, will they then start contemplating actually these nuclear strikes? Because it seems that the quagmire is much more than a quagmire. It's much worse than Iraq. This might be an outright, a Vietnam type of scenario.
If they dared to use, if Trump and the United States dared to use any nuclear weapons, we'd be in a nuclear war with Russia and China, and probably North Korea as well.
Why do you think the Russians or the Chinese would respond on behalf of Iran?
Yes, Iran. They signed a trilateral strategic agreement with them the end of January, and recognized that Iran is going to play a critical role in the future economic realm of BRICS. It has historically been a critical crossroads for the Silk Road coming out of China, and now this whole north-south corridor. No, they're not going to stand by and let the United States deliver nuclear weapons on Iran. That's not going to happen.
Okay, let's hope that message is actually understood. It just seems pretty bad. Pretty bad.
No, it is very bad.
Is there anything that's still on your mind that you haven't seen circulating a lot in the news that deserves mentioning, or did we about cover it?
Well, that Iran's demands, they're starting to clarify that they're demanding reparations.
Yes.
IRGC said that they're going to hold out for the destruction of Israel, that Israel's going to have to cease to exist. Now, that's going to be interesting to see if they can pull that. I think they actually have a way to potentially pull that off, but then that carries with it the nuclear threat.
Yeah.
And the only way to counter that nuclear threat is to have their own nuke, which I believe now Iran is going to do. The United States' actions have now led Iran to have no other choice but to do that. But I can't underemphasize that, or we should not underestimate the strategic power that Iran holds by shutting down the economic flow of oil, liquid natural gas, and urea out of the Persian Gulf.
Yep.
That is going, at a minimum, we're looking at global recession. That's going to happen. After 2 weeks of this, there's no doubt that's going to happen. The question is, how severe will that economic recession be? Will it turn into a depression? And I think if this goes on I think this very well can go on easily for 6 months. Well, 6 months it would be devastating. So that means the United States is going to have to make a deal with Iran, and Iran's deal at a minimum is going to be reparations. You're going to pay for all the damage you've done, and you're going to lift all the economic sanctions on us, and you're not going to interfere with our ability to enrich as much damn uranium as we want, and it's none of your business. That'll be their demand. And if the United States says, no, we're not going to accept that, Iran is okay, then suck on this. No oil, no liquid natural gas. And at 6-month period, the Qatar and United Arab Emirates, they will no longer be able to return to what they were. They will be, the all the wealthy have flocked there. They'll be vacating it.
What an insane mess. What
Yeah.
an insane mess.
Yeah.
Larry, thank you very much. Everybody, please follow Larry Johnson on his homepage, Sonar21, that is, correct?
Yes, sir.
And
thank you for indulging me. It's late at night. I'm gonna smoke a cigar and enjoy the outdoor temperatures in Florida. It's
I am very glad you
20,
can, and
22 degrees Celsius, 72 degrees Fahrenheit.
beautiful. Enjoy the wonderful Caribbean night over there, and enjoy your cigar. You really deserve it. Larry Johnson, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Pascal.